All right, everybody, welcome to the Hockey Podcast alongside Doug Cannon. I am Luke Lipinski. Doug, how you doing today?
Doing great, man. This is awesome.
This is the best time of year. You got the other sports going on because it's March, but then you have hockey, and especially this year, you have the hockey playoffs right around the corner, and every game matters that much more this season. So it feels like every week something changes dramatically, and we'll get into a lot of that throughout the show. But I guess let's start with realignment because that's clearly the biggest story this week. I don't know, what are your first impressions when you look at some of these new divisions? Because all of a sudden this is going through.
There's other sports?
That's fair. That's fair.
Oh, okay.
I was just being nice.
You said that. I was just like, oh, there's other sports. Okay.
We don't have to focus on those. That's why this is the Hockey Podcast.
That's right. Exactly. I love the realignment. I'm also amazed that both sides came together and said, let's do it.
Right? Really quickly.
There was no hesitation whatsoever. I've heard a couple of players in the news just go, nah, we'll see. I still would like this. I would still like that. It's only a trial basis. It's only through the 15-16 season.
Yeah.
So things could revert back to the way they were. I hope not.
I don't think they will because once you get into something 3 years deep, are you really going to want to realign again?
No.
Unless you absolutely have to. And I think those players are all in Florida anyway because they don't have to travel 1,200 miles to their nearest opponent.
Well, I think, too, the way it's set up with 7-team divisions in the West, 8-team divisions in the East, you've also got down the road, you've lined it up so that I can either expand 2 teams or I can retract by 2 teams.
Yeah.
To balance out the divisions.
Yeah.
Depending on how healthy the league is 5-10 years down the road.
Yeah, and I think the place that the league is in right now, I think that the natural thought is that if they're going to do anything, they're going to expand, but it's interesting to me that, like you said, they could have easily done 8-7 in one conference, 8-7 in another. It seems to me like if they're going to expand, they want to expand in the West.
Right, and I think because the teams that you have in the East and the way they set up the divisions geographically, it's clearly when you look at the list, and we'll look at them a little deeper here, but when you look at it, it's geographic.
Yeah.
I mean, that had to be their key thing is like geographic. So then you go to the money aspect of it, travel.
Yeah.
Let's just dive into the Eastern Conference. And I'm going to start with Division D first.
Yeah, we're going to have to name these at some point. I'm not going with Division D, Division C.
That was my first tweet. My first tweet was, does this mean the Campbell and the Whales come back?
Yeah, they should. I mean, we'll let's start with that. Actually, how do you feel about that? Because they're going to have to name these divisions. I guess they're going to go with the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference. But do they go with the the Patrick and the Adams and the Smythe? Or
I'm an old Norris guy. I love the Norris division.
I don't think anybody would be offended if they did that.
I'm a traditionalist.
Yeah,
I love hockey because guys that play hockey, guys that love hockey, love and respect the game, the tradition, a lot like baseball fans.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history and tradition with the game, a lot of history and tradition with it. And I had someone say to me the other day, well, young kids don't know about that. Well, you know what? If you put the name in there, they might go look and figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So now they do know about it. But I would love it. I would love to see it come back.
Division?
No, I don't think you want to do that. No, I agree with that.
So you kind of have to go with what was already there.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're going to go with that. I kind of just assumed they were going to go Pacific, Central, whatever. But they still are calling them A, B, C, and D, and I can't imagine that's going to be their plan down the line.
No, and I saw somebody mention that they might go time zones.
Okay.
Eastern, Pacific, Mountain, Central.
I mean, you can do that, and like you said, it's so geographically driven, which I think was the right thing to do, that nobody's going to complain if you do that.
No.
But the other way is kind of like an opportunity to go back to the 80s and the 90s and, before.
But I just love the fact that I think from financially it helps the clubs. Then on the other hand, I think from a fan standpoint, the rivalries.
Yeah.
And Division D is the one that jumps out to me the most because, you got New Jersey, the Islanders, the Rangers, Philly, Pittsburgh, Washington, all together. And the newcomers is, Columbus and Carolina.
But they don't have rivals anywhere, so no matter where you put them.
But if I'm a Columbus fan, what a great division to be in and to have those rivalries start.
Yeah, I mean, I think across the board they did an excellent job keeping the rivalries together because that division might be the best example. But over in Division A now, you still have four of the main five teams from the Pacific Division. You still got Anaheim, LA, Phoenix, San Jose, and then you kept Calgary and Edmonton together too. And Edmonton's going to be good at some point.
Right.
So that's a great rivalry. And I mean, I think that the fact that they were able to keep things geographically sensible and still keep the rivalries together was smart. I guess the winner maybe is Columbus out of all this because their games are now on earlier, and like you said, they're right by Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. I mean, they're not going to be the same sort of rivals, but they can get in there.
Well, I think another winner in the Eastern Conference in the C division is Detroit. They take them out of the Western Conference to put them in the Eastern Conference. So now you got Detroit fans that are basically in the Eastern time zone that are constantly playing LA, Phoenix, Anaheim. A 7 o'clock start on the West Coast is 10 o'clock back east.
Yeah.
So you don't have East Coast fans or Eastern time zone fans staying up till midnight to watch their team play. You're geographically in your time zone. You're going to watch your team more because they're in your time zone. You're going to have one game a year, against those West Coast teams. So it reduces that.
Yeah, and I think that's probably Detroit had to be the driving force behind this, right? Other than the fact that they had to get Winnipeg out of the Southeast Division.
Right.
But I think they could have easily just swapped Winnipeg and Detroit. But I mean, I think they probably wanted to do something similar for Columbus, and that Red Wings fans, it's not ideal to have to stay up and start watching your team at 10 o'clock at night. But you're gonna watch them because it's the Red Wings. You're not gonna watch them if they're Columbus and they're losing 60 games a year.
Right.
So Columbus getting over there basically in the same spot is in a pretty good position too. And I don't know if they're going to win a lot of games for a while, but at least fans in Columbus can watch their team.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. And then back in the Eastern Conference in the C division, you got four of the six originals.
That is cool.
You've got Boston, Montreal, Toronto, Detroit. I mean, that's pretty sick if you're one of those fans.
Yeah.
If you're an Ottawa fan, seeing Boston and Detroit and Toronto and Montreal on a frequent basis is really, really cool. And then, we'll bounce around here, Western Conference Division B, you got Chicago, Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota, Nashville, St. Louis, Winnipeg. The only thing that jumps out to me there is like Nashville.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like each division, maybe with the exception of Division A, but the other divisions all kind of have one team thrown in there. Like it's just Carolina with
right.
the old Patrick division, and Division C. It's you just said all those original 6 teams, and then
Florida.
Tampa? Yeah. So, and even Buffalo gets in there. They have a nice rivalry with Toronto.
Yep.
They have some history as well. So I mean that division is Boston, Buffalo, Detroit, Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto. I know Ottawa's fairly new, but
you have
20 years.
You have the Battle of Ontario between Ottawa and Toronto.
Yeah.
That's a heated rivalry right there. You have the age-old rivalry between Montreal and Toronto, Montreal and Boston.
Montreal and Detroit even.
Yeah.
You can put Detroit anywhere and they have rivals.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. You look at this, what's the toughest division? Because I know it's going to change from year to year, and obviously if you are in an 8-team division, it's a little tougher for you because the way it's going to work now is the top 3 will make the playoffs.
Right.
Then there will be 2 wild cards from each conference in case somehow somebody doesn't know that yet. So it's mathematically, obviously, it's tougher if you're in the Eastern Conference. But the travel's a lot easier in the Eastern Conference, too, so that kind of balances out.
I think the league's just done such a great job because, they've looked at the financial aspect from a club standpoint, reduces travel. Then they've looked at the geographic aspect. So the teams are pretty much, the rivalry is nice and tight in those zones. And then viewing times, television, is also taken into consideration if you look at the way they've set it up. And I just think that they've really, really sat down in a room and they put their heads together and they came up with a really nice, solid game plan here.
And it went through really quick, like you said. I mean, with what we had to deal with, a few months ago for the NHL and the NHLPA to come together so quickly, and then the Board of Governors just throw it right through.
Well, if you remember the first time they proposed realignment, I even thought that proposal was pretty good.
It was pretty similar.
And they went, no. It was that simple. No.
Yeah.
And then I saw this coming because the best thing I love is you play everybody once at home and once in away. And I said that when they had the the previous realignment proposal prior to this one, that you got to be able to see every single team.
It was, to me, the biggest mistake the NHL was making, was not doing that. And I think, people are critical of every league and whatever sport you follow. Yeah, and there are other sports we won't talk about. But, people are critical of the NHL at times. But this league has done so much in that they're not afraid to do something like this. You're not going to see Major League Baseball instantly realigned to something because even if it's better for the game, and this is better probably for the NHL, I don't see how it hurts the NHL. And if anything, it's an improvement.
I think it's great for the fans.
Yep.
I think it's great for TV. I think it's great for the league, and I think it's great for the clubs. And I think once the players get into this, they're really going to enjoy it, and they're going to love it. Now, we've got realignment. One more change.
Okay.
One more
change.
And then me, as a hockey fan, I'll be a very, very happy person.
Toronto automatic bid into the playoffs every year?
White jerseys at home, dark jerseys on the road.
You and I agree on this.
Just throw that in there on the back of the realignment, and boom.
I don't know why that ever changed. I don't get it.
Right?
It just visually makes sense. If I'm at a hockey game, I know what my home team's colors are. I know that. And so I look at them as wearing white and a little bit of their color. I want to see the other team's jerseys. Right now, every other team that comes in looks the same.
Right.
So what's the point? Like, you have this colorful jersey. Hockey jerseys are the best.
So now I'm going to have every single team in the league come to my city, and I want to see all those jerseys.
Yeah, that to me is a no-brainer. It's the one thing now that I don't think that they're doing right. But, going back to your point of you got to see every team. You have to be able to do that. Look, if you're on the East right now, I know this is a shortened season, so it kind of throws everything off. But let's just say this was a normal 82-game season. There's no guarantee you see the defending Stanley Cup champions ever come to your town.
That's a crime.
You have to be able to
That's
see
a crime.
that.
Rangers.
Yeah,
I want to see Rick Nash.
The Rangers.
I want to see the stars on the other teams. I don't want to read about it. I want to see him play.
I want to see Crosby. I want to see Giroux. I want to see, like you said,
Right.
Rick Nash. I want to see Steven Stamkos. I mean, the guy's putting up 60 goals a year. I want to see those players. I want to see the rookies that are up and coming. I know the argument's out there of, well, you just get the NHL package. You can see them on TV. That's true. And I have the NHL package, but it's not the same.
No.
Like, I want to see these guys in person.
Right.
And when the work stoppage was still going and all the traveling all-stars came to Phoenix and were playing and I went out there and saw that, it's different seeing guys in person. It just is.
And I'll go back to the fact that I love tradition. I love the game. I want to see the Bruins. I want to see Toronto. I want to see Montreal. I want to see Detroit. I want to see the Rangers. I want to see those teams. I want to see the Avalanche. Well, I guess we see them enough.
But, somebody wants to see them, I'm
the
sure.
Jets. It's a new team.
Yeah.
It's a new logo. It's a new jersey. I want to see them.
Well, to your point, I want to see the original 6, and 5 of them are in the East now. So
Right.
you can't just take those away from the Western Conference fan base. And now that Detroit's over there, I still want to see them. Like, we got sick of seeing them here for a while there because we just saw them like every other day, it seemed like, just
Right.
because of the playoff series, and you already play them 4 times a year. But now that things are settling down, I still want to see them here once and there once. And I just think it makes too much sense, and I'm glad they finally did that.
Yeah, I mean, it was just... In every news article or soundbite I've heard from different GMs across the league, they're all ecstatic.
Yeah. I mean, the other sports do it. You got to do it.
You have to.
Baseball doesn't do it, I guess. And to me, it's the one drawback to football is you don't see every team. You can't because of the way the schedule's set up. But hockey and basketball lend themselves to being able to see every team home and away.
And that was the thing I always had, is that the NBA's been doing it for a while.
And if the NBA can do it.
And I'm like, why not? You've kind of used their model in different chunks as you've gone along. Let's just do it.
Yeah, just take the best aspects. And the important thing is they did it. And this is, like I said, the NHL has done some things wrong over the last few years, but they've also done a lot of things right. And this to me is another one of those forward-thinking moves.
So let's cross our fingers and hope that after 2015-16, it's still in place.
I think it will be.
And we have our white jerseys at home.
Well, we might need to push for that for a couple years. All right, Doug, the Mark Stahl incident that I guess is about a week and a half back now kind of brought to light the whole debate about visors in the National Hockey League and should players wear them, should they have to wear them. It seems like one of those things where, at least for now, they're not mandatory, but even if they don't become mandatory, it just feels like we're eventually going to hit the point where 98% 8% of the players in the league are going to just voluntarily wear visors because, I mean, what's the point of risking, potentially permanent damage to your face? Mark Stahl seems to be fine. It seems like he's going to make a full recovery, and that's good news. But it seems like something like this happens once every year, and this debate comes up again. And I don't think it's a coincidence. Every year, the percentage of players in the NHL that wears visors also goes up.
Yeah, I mean, it increases. My whole thing is that it's going to be like the helmet. When mandatory helmet wearing came into the league, a lot of resistance. I'm not tough. I'm not macho. So they had the grandfather clause. So the guys, it assimilated through attrition, into the league.
To the point where just Craig McTavish was running around without.
So you had one guy, because he was the last guy to get grandfathered in, and then boom, now everybody wears a helmet. And now I think that's what you're going to see with the visors. I think you're right. I mean, the percentage has gone up. I don't know if you've got those numbers.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay, so just to give everybody a kind of a perspective, 2001, 2002 season, so not that long ago.
No, that's not that long ago.
28% of players in the NHL were wearing visors. And, if you've watched hockey for the last 10 years, you don't even need the numbers. You can just tell on the eye test. Now you look around and it's almost, think of all the main players in the league, they almost all wear it. And you don't even really think about it. It's not like football where the league has to worry about, you're never going to see the guy's face, so you just have a name, you don't have a face. I mean, there's NFL players that go out and, once they're on TV in a different venue, you don't even recognize them. Hockey doesn't have that problem. So 2001, 2002 season, 28%. Last year, 69%, and now this year it's jumped up to 73%. And honestly, those numbers are going up because guys are switching to visors right now in the middle of the season, too.
So with those numbers, there's only 27% of the guys that aren't wearing it.
Yeah, we're going to get to there anyway.
So you're talking number-wise around 140 players in the whole NHLPA because there's, 700-plus guys.
Yeah.
So roughly 140 players aren't wearing visors. It's going to happen.
I don't even know if the NHL... I think the NHL wants it to happen. I don't know that they even need to make it mandatory. But the most telling thing to me is I can't remember a player, and I'm sure maybe there's one or two, but for the most part, I can't remember a player who switches to the visor and then hates it so much they switch back.
Yeah, I've worn a visor. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah,
it really isn't. I've worn a cage.
Yeah.
Not a cage fan.
Not a cage fan either, but you can get used to it.
Yes, you can, and there's different cages, and there's different paint, and there's all kinds of ways to get around it. I'm just not a fan.
Yeah, and that's never going to be an issue in the NHL anyway.
No, and you look at guys like the guy that always stuck when this came to light after Stahl got hurt. Shortly after that, Pronger came out.
Yeah,
and addressed the media. And what people forget about Pronger's injury was that they all think that he's out because of a concussion. Well, that concussion happened because he took a puck to the eye. So again, if he's wearing a visor, is one of the star players in the league out?
Yeah, he might still be playing, and he's been out for a year and a half.
Right.
And I think that's the key. There's a certain mentality of toughness in the NHL and in hockey at all levels, and that's fine, and that's part of what makes this game great. But this game also moves at a high speed. There's injuries that are unavoidable. There's also injuries that are avoidable, and a lot of these, an errant puck or even a high stick to the face, a visor's not going to stop everything, but it's going to stop a lot.
It's going to slow it down.
Yeah.
I mean, would Pronger have the injury to his face? Probably not. Would he have a mild concussion? Because you still have the impact of the puck hitting the visor, hitting the helmet, so your head's still getting the impact from the puck.
Yeah.
Concussions aren't just falling and hitting your head against the board. It could be errant stick coming down on top of a helmet, and you can have concussion-like symptoms. He took it in the eye. And so I think if he's wearing a visor, that visor might crack and shatter or whatever, and it's gone. Now, let's take it another step. If more guys are wearing visors, because this is another issue kind of connected to the visor issue, fighting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother animal right there.
Nobody in the league wants to say no more fighting.
No, that's not going to happen.
But if you have 100% of the guys wearing visors, the likelihood, I think, of a fisticuff happening reduces.
And maybe that's why the league doesn't make it mandatory. I mean, I'm just completely going off on a tangent here, but maybe they don't make it mandatory with the thought that 96% of players or whatever are going to choose to wear visors because they're going to see stuff like what happened to Stahl, and they're going to say it's just not worth not wearing it. But the guys that are on the ice for 8 minutes a night that are fighters can still have the option to not have that visor so they don't get punched into their face in the middle of a fight.
Yeah, I can see that, but I mean, I look at Olympic hockey, and it's just great hockey, and not very many fights in Olympic hockey.
That's true.
It's just end-to-end playing, passing, good solid checks. The game's still physical, and there is no fighting. And I'm trying to think of the player that got knocked out the other night.
In the Ottawa-Toronto game?
In the Ottawa game.
David Jarzynski? There's two Jarzynskis, and it's very confusing to me. But yeah, he was fighting Fraser McLaren.
That young player should have just said no.
Yeah.
The veterans should have let him go.
Well, that's a whole other culture because then you have the young guy who has to make his mark to his teammates because it's one of his first games in the NHL,
right.
And you're not going to probably score in one of your first games in the NHL, so you want to do something to stand out. So you go after the other team's biggest player, and stuff like what happened can happen.
So, but I'm just thinking that if they're wearing visors, are they going to throw punches, or I got to take the helmet off before I can fight? I mean, I think it might just slow down fighting, slow down silly injuries, because the errant injuries will always be there.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, with visors is if I get hit in the arm with a stick or a puck or a shoulder, or these are injuries I can come back from.
Yeah.
But if I don't have my eyesight,
can't come back from that.
Can't come back from that.
And
we had one guy that tried. Remember Berard?
I do.
He's legally blind, and is it right eye? I think it's his right eye.
Not worth it.
It's not worth it. It really isn't worth it.
And, like we said, freak injuries can still happen really in any sport, and hockey's probably more prone to them, but why not cut down on the percentages? Just play the percentages.
Right.
And, we're talking about guys that are going to convert over to it. The story with Brooks Orpik this week, to me, is just crazy because this guy had played, I think it was 678 career NHL games, so this is not a rookie.
Right.
Never wore a visor, which to me is insane if you're playing defense and not wearing a visor. Right. But that's a lot of the guys that don't wear them are playing defense. He sees what happened to Mark Stahl, and his exact line, if I have it here, was people kept asking him why he's not wearing one, and he ran out of answers. And so he finally switched to wearing one, and it was either the second game or the third game he played. He got hit in the face, in the visor, so the visor saved him, essentially. I mean, we don't know what it saved him from, but he got hit with a shot in the face,
right,
in the visor that he wasn't wearing for the previous 10 years of his career until 2 days earlier. Makes a difference.
Makes a huge difference, and it goes back to the Pronger thing. If he's wearing a visor, is his concussion as severe as it has been for the last year and a half? Well, I don't think so.
No.
We don't know for sure, but I don't think so.
Logic dictates probably not.
Right. So then as we progress, so we're at 73% of the guys are wearing them. So now the guys that are in the league now, they're going to age out.
Yeah.
So you got all these young players behind them. We know in Europe they wear visors. We know in the 3 major junior leagues they wear visors. In NCAA hockey they wear cages. So, you look at the OHL, the WHL, the Quebec Major League. It's mandatory for young players to wear visors in those junior leagues. So as a junior player, I've played 4 years for a junior club at a high level. Why would I enter the NHL and take the visor off? You're not going to.
You're not. And that's where it's going to eventually get to 100% or as
right.
close as you can get, because there is the toughness thing, and I don't want to be the guy out there who's wearing a visor and nobody else is, but now everybody else is. And also, more than that, I think, at least from my perspective of ever playing hockey, it's just a comfort thing. And so if you've grown up not wearing a visor and now somebody's saying, put this on your face, and you're going out there playing and the game's moving so fast and you're having a hard time just seeing the puck because your visor's fogging up, or you're just not used to it. And there's a line of vision that's cut out with the visor, but then you get used to it and that line of vision isn't cut out anymore.
Well, even with the new ones, though, the visors aren't as thin as they used to be, because they used to be thin so that they just covered the eye.
Yeah.
Now they come down to almost the top of the cheekbone, and they got smart, and there's a lot of the major guys, they have like just a little cutout that where your nose would be, so you're not fogging up with your breath, right?
I mean, the advances in technology that are going to happen are already happening.
A lot of them are scratch resistant. so you can wear them multiple times without having, your vision's not going to be impaired. So, I mean, the only guy that would be different would be a guy from, let's say, the NCAA that wears a full cage going to a visor.
And it's easier.
It's easier to go that way.
So he's improving his vision in that regard, if anything. But yeah, it's tough to get a player that's never worn one and say, you're fighting for your job in the NHL and now put this potential hindrance on. When you're used to it your whole life, why would you go away from it? You're just not going to.
Yeah, I think we'll see 100% before, sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only 27% that's not doing it.
And that number, I mean, that'll be down. Then next year it'll probably be up to 80% of players that wear them, just based on stuff that's happened this year.
So right now, 11 years ago, we have 28% wore visor.
We've jumped half the league almost.
And now 27% aren't wearing it.
Every time you jump up, it gets easier. Yeah.
Right. So
there you go.
Visors will be a regular thing, and it doesn't, from a television standpoint, it doesn't, you can still see the dude's face.
It doesn't hurt you at all.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt you at all. So I think visors will be a commonplace thing.
All right, we'll wrap things up here with some news and notes around the National Hockey League. Quite a few events taking place this week, and I feel like maybe it isn't the most important thing, but it's certainly the most entertaining. Is John Tortorella anytime he goes off on the New York media? I just really enjoy it, and I'm not pro or anti Rangers. They're currently 10th in the Eastern Conference, which is mind-boggling to me. I mean, you start to get to the point there where you have to jump over other teams just to get into the playoffs when people were talking Stanley Cup before the start of the season. And you can see why John Tortorella is frustrated, but he goes off after a loss to Buffalo earlier this week and basically starts asking the reporters questions, which is my favorite move when he goes to that one, because then they answer and he gets mad that they answered. They haven't won since. They lost to Winnipeg after that and then Pittsburgh. I don't know. I mean, my biggest concern with the Rangers losing is, at some point, do they consider a coaching change? Because to me, we all lose if Tortorella's out.
I've always been a huge fan of John Tortorella.
He's great.
And the thing I love about him, whether he was with the Coyotes as an assistant head in Tampa, he won a cup in Tampa. He's honest. He's direct.
Very much so.
He doesn't mince his words, and I find that really refreshing. I think that it's a double-edged sword for John. If he's coaching a college or a high school team and he calls out his players, they might respond. They're amateurs.
They have to respond. They don't have a choice, really.
Yeah. Professionals, I don't know. Professional athletes are paying a lot of money, and they all know that whether they win or lose, they still get paid.
Yeah, and like you said off the air, they're not going. If the Rangers miss the playoffs this year, they're not trading Brad Richards and Rick Nash and Marian Gaborik and Ryan McDonough and Henrik Lundqvist.
We know who's going.
Yeah, and here's the thing. There was talk about Tortorella earlier in the year of, how far does this team have to go for him to keep his job? And my first thought was, well, that's ridiculous, because in my mind, he's certainly one of the top 5 coaches in the NHL. But what you just said hits on the point of the way the Rangers play hockey. They have all this talent, but they play a sort of grinded out style, and they just, players got to buy in. They got to block shots. They got to respond. He's called out pretty much everybody on the team at one time or another this year, except Lundqvist. And for the most part, they've responded individually, but that coaching style only works for so long before you've got to go somewhere else.
And I never thought of that until you just mentioned it. I mean, is that the X factor? Do the players have to adjust, or does the coach need to make some adjustments? Because he does have some skilled players but Rick Nash is huge, dude. I mean, he's used to bumping and grinding. He did it in Columbus for all those years. I mean, you would think that a guy like Rick Nash wouldn't have a problem adapting to that style of hockey.
You would think so, but the Rangers have the same record as Columbus right now. So, I mean, that's...
Well, he moved cities. He just brought the record with him.
Same colors. They look very similar right now. It's one of those things where, again, I mean, I don't... If I'm running the Rangers, I'm not firing John Tortorella, except for the one thing of he called these guys out so many times last year, and he's very intense and emotional, and they had a lot of success last year. Now he's doing it, and they're not having success. At what point does his shelf life in New York burn out? And don't get me wrong, the second that the Rangers let him go, if they do, there's 20 other teams lining up because they want him, and he'll be effective there.
Yeah, but he's in a point race right now for 8th.
With the Islanders, too. I mean,
The
that's
Islanders and Philly.
I don't know what Philadelphia's doing down there either. We can talk about them another time. But I rather enjoy them being down there. But
Why?
We'll go into that another time, too. But, yeah, it's weird in the East. Rangers and Philadelphia, 2 teams I think people thought could challenge for the Cup, and
they should be in the top 8.
The standings in general in the East are weird. Montreal's in first. And when we're recording this, Pittsburgh may have moved past them because they just beat Boston. It doesn't really matter. Montreal's at the top of the Eastern Conference. How? How are they up there?
They're stealthing it. I mean, goaltending. Goaltending's how they're doing it.
Yeah. It's almost like they don't want anybody to notice. I mean, last year they were 15th out of 15 teams in the East. And now they're in first. You don't see that in hockey. You see that in football.
Right.
You don't see it you only see it in football. You don't see it in hockey, baseball, basketball. But you never see it in the NHL. And for them, they were so bad last year that they got to take Alex Galchenyuk with, I think, the 3rd pick in the draft.
Okay.
And now here they are in first. You're right, it's goaltending. And I think a lot of that is because there isn't good goaltending this year across the league.
The goaltending's been horrible this year.
Not good at all.
But Price is standing on his head, man. He's doing what everybody expected him to do. He's got, off the top of my head, like 15 wins.
Yeah, 15, 4-3, and a 2.33 goals against average.
He's consistent. He's just being consistent, and he's keeping Montreal in there, and they're on a 5-game win streak, as we record this, and I think they're the sleeper. I think they're the sleeper in the East. They're going to go deep.
Well, we've seen before, if you have good goaltending in the playoffs, and we've seen it with Montreal before with Yaroslav Halak, but if you have good goaltending in the playoffs, you can beat anybody. And
absolutely,
they have enough offense. They just don't have any one player standing out. But you look through the top goals against average in the NHL right now this year, and it's Victor Foss, it's Jonathan Bernier, who's played 9 games, it's Jake Allen, who's a rookie, it's Martin Brodeur, who's 130 years old and not playing. I mean, there's not the only guys the names you recognize are Carey Price, Lundqvist is right there too, but Lundqvist isn't getting any support like we just talked about, and Sergei Bobrovsky and Tuukka Rask. So I mean, those are the only full-time starters that are doing this. And like you said, Carey Price is consistent. He always does this, and he's got help up front now.
Yeah, he's got some help up front. And then Montreal, the other little X factor that not getting a whole lot of attention right now that he's signed a contract, is PK.
Yeah.
He's got
20 points.
20 points in 22 games.
Yeah. And I mean, that's from your defenseman who's also not sacrificing on the defensive end of the ice.
Right.
And the thing about him, and you and I talked about this a little bit off the air, it's one of those things where he wasn't signed to start the year. They got the deal done. It wasn't like the Ryan O'Reilly thing that just dragged out forever in Colorado. And one of the things that a lot of people were saying was you have to have a face of your franchise, especially in Montreal with all that tradition. And Carey Price is great, but he's hidden behind a mask.
Right.
So PK Subban can be that because Montreal's got all these guys up front that are producing, but who do you know?
And he's flamboyant, and he's emotional, and he's passionate, and that's easy to get on the coattails of that, man. And now your team's winning, so now that wave is just that much bigger, and you can just progress that much more. Yeah, I know. I think Montreal's going to be a team to watch. So now then we slide quickly over to the West.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the West this year because
let's take a look at the West.
Chicago's 23-2-3. They're coming off an 8-1 victory over Dallas. Where I don't even know. I don't know if Dallas pulled their goalie to start the game. I don't know what was going on in that game. But Chicago now, so they start the year 21-0-3, and I had mixed feelings on this because it's good for the sport because mainstream media is talking about this remarkable run Chicago's on.
Right.
Can't take anything away from that. It's an amazing run. But my problem was we were 24 games in. I know this year that's half the season, but people were handing them the Stanley Cup. And they went out there. They were winning a lot of one-goal games. They didn't have to deal with any injuries. Now they're dealing with injuries, and they're losing to teams like Colorado and Edmonton, and still first in the league, obviously, but they're 5 points up on Anaheim. It's not like they ran away with anything.
No.
And I don't know that I like them in a 7-game series.
I don't either. Not, when you got teams like Anaheim.
Anaheim looks really good to me.
I think Anaheim's a team to watch in the West, personally. They're big, they're talented. They can grind you down in a 7-game series.
That's the key. Chicago can't.
No.
Boston can. Anaheim can.
Right.
LA can.
I think Detroit is oldest in the arc can.
They might grind themselves down too. Detroit's dangerous in any one series.
And that little guy hiding behind the tree is LA, because they got some physical guys too. They got talent. They got a lot of talent on that club.
There's a lot of teams in the West that, to me, could win any series against any team from the West. So then you look who can get through 3 playoff series, 7-game series. And it's not like Chicago can't, and I don't even have a problem with them being the favorite, but it was so overwhelming a week and a half ago that it was...
Well, LA's waking up.
Yeah.
And they're waking up at the right time.
Which is what they did last year.
Right. Chicago, did they spend it all in those first 21 games?
You know, I thought they did a good job with the streak not becoming like a burden.
Right.
I thought they did a good job with that, but also it was kind of an odd streak. I mean, they lost 3 games in there. I know they lost them in the shootout, but I thought they did a good job of kind of feeding off that positively.
Right.
But at the same time, a lot of things went their way. And in a 7-game series, I think a team like Anaheim, a team like LA can grind them down. I mean, there's other teams in that conference that can beat them in a 7-game series. Phoenix did it last year. Detroit can beat anybody in a 7-game series. My thought was, what if Chicago plays Boston in the Stanley Cup, which is entirely possible? There's no way Chicago beats Boston in a 7-game series.
Well, then, looking at the standings, you look at the third place team in the West and the 9th place team in the West. 2 points.
2 points more.
That's it. There is so much movement with 20, depending on who you are. Most teams have got about 20 to 19 games left in the season. And 2-point swing. I mean, a couple of losses and you go from 3rd to 9th.
There's 2 Western Conference games today, and there's 1. And the whole scenario is just going to change on
right.
one game.
On one game.
So
that's how tight it is. I mean, it's just, forget Edmonton, forget Colorado. They're out.
Yeah, Edmonton's going to get the number 1 pick again. And I shouldn't say there's no chance Chicago could knock off Boston, but it's not the given everybody thought it was. And one of the teams that we keep touching on, Anaheim, right behind them, they're in a weird spot. Corey Perry gets suspended this week.
That's right.
For 4 games on a hit that, we're not going to necessarily debate the suspension here, but 4 games for a hit on Jason Zucker. So Anaheim's experiencing life without the guy who won the Hart Trophy 2 seasons ago. 50 goals 2 seasons ago. And they've scored 2 goals total in those 2 games. They've won 1, they've lost 1. But it brings up the point, the interesting debate of, what do they do with this guy? He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. They just threw a ton of money at Ryan Getzlaf. You have to keep Corey Perry. But if you keep him and he walks at the end of the season, you better win the Stanley Cup this season.
I think they have to keep him. I think he's a fixture with the team. I think he's a fixture with the fans. I don't think number 8's coming back next year.
That's probably true.
I don't know the cap numbers. I don't have them in front of me. But I'm sure that frees up a lot of money.
Yeah, and I wonder if maybe Solani has already talked to the front office, and maybe he doesn't know yet. But if he knows, I wonder if he said, look, this is off the record, this is my last year, so you can plan accordingly with Corey Perry. Because Corey Perry right now, this year, is making $5.3 million. He's going to want closer to what Ryan Getzlaf got, which is $8.2 million starting next year. But Teemu Solani's making $4.5 million this year. So if you take that off the books and you give most of that to Corey Perry,
you can do it.
You still have Perry, Ryan, and Getzlaf together,
which is a pretty dominant line.
Yeah,
in hockey. That. I'll take it.
So
I think I really don't see number 8 coming back. I think he's done. I'm sure he could probably play. I've watched him play this year. He hasn't slowed down an ounce.
It's ridiculous.
It's 41 years old and he's still flying around. So. But I don't know. Does he come back? I'm not sure that he does come back.
There was talk he might not have come back if this year had been canceled.
Right.
So, we have to get to this before we leave because I don't know why I was watching Ottawa and Boston. I may have a problem. But I was watching the shootout live and Kaspers Dugavins goes up to take the shootout shot. And the shootout was tied at this point. He was the last shooter for Ottawa. Puts the blade, the toe of his stick on the puck before he even starts. And then proceeds to stick handle up the ice just like that. It looked like the skills competition, kind of.
Right.
But this was a real game, and he got stopped by Tuukka Rask, who made a pretty good save. So Ottawa loses because Boston comes down and scores the very next shot, and that's it. And it's just a normal shot. There were people that were upset. They were saying it was showboating, it was gimmicky, and I guess in a way it cost them the game. I don't necessarily agree with that. He's doing it.
Wait a minute, how did that cost them the game?
Because he was the last shooter.
But the guy that went down,
It's true.
the goalie didn't stop the puck.
That's a very fair point.
So I didn't score and he didn't save. So whose fault is it?
He was a lightning rod for criticism. How's that?
Absolutely.
So,
I didn't stop the puck, guys. Sorry, but the guy that didn't score, it's his fault.
if he had scored, we'd still be playing. No guarantee he scores if he comes down and shoots. This is a play he's done in the AHL and it's worked, and it would have worked probably if not for Tuukka Rask.
He got his toe right at the last second. The puck, the toe at the post, it all converged at that one point. Split second, it's in.
Yeah. Now he can't do it again.
No.
What he should do is next time he should start off like he's doing it and then just come up and rip a slap shot.
And just rip it. And
Yeah,
absolutely. What do I think of it? Shootout's a gimmick. What he did was a gimmick. Shootout is to entertain the fans. What he did was entertaining. I showed it to my sons. They thought it was the coolest thing ever. Even though he didn't score. Who is the NHL talking to? You're talking to young players that watch these guys. They take what they watch and they take it to their games. They take it to their practices. Those guys are idols to young youth hockey players. I'm a fan. I spent $75 to sit in the lower bowl of my arena. It was entertaining. I walked away entertained. My team didn't win, but I was entertained.
You grow the game because you're reaching out to kids, and it's not... It is gimmicky because there's only so many different moves you can make in a shootout.
Right.
But he didn't bring props in. I mean, we get to that point, then we have problems.
Right.
He was still trying to win the game. Like I said, it's a shot that works for him before.
Listen, if you put skates on to come in that tight to the goalie, and I think maybe because he was a little tight, he didn't get that split second. If you'd done the spinorama a little earlier, Tuukka Rask might not have gotten that foot over. But he was like right up on the goalie at that point when he did the spinorama. The spinorama is not an easy move to do.
No, especially like that.
Especially with your stick toe down.
Yeah.
And then do it. I mean, I've seen guys do it, with the puck on their blade, and even then it's a difficult move to execute.
I'm somebody that when I play hockey, that's a move that I do in warm-ups just because it helps me stick handle or whatever. Not the one that Dugovins did, but just the doing the spinorama. And I do it so often now that I can do the spin, but to then make a good shot on an NHL goalie, that in itself is tough. And look, Linus Omark, I think it was Linus Omark, somebody in Edmonton's system did this a couple years ago where he did the spinorama and the shot, and everybody was like, this guy's a hot dog, what's his problem? Right. Now it's common.
Guys do pull-ups and spinoramas, and I've actually noticed it a lot more this year. Who did it the other night? Chara did it.
Yeah, that was in the game. That was ridiculous.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's a move that's used.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy move. But, again, shootout's a gimmick. He used a little gimmicky thing. It's no different than the shot between the legs.
No.
It's not. It's no different than... Radim Vrbata on the Coyotes making his little specialty move where he always goes to his backhand and flips it up and beats netminders every single night with the same move.
Yeah.
Every guy has their gimmick, and every guy practice it in practice. They'll go through all their drills with their coaches. When they have free time at the end, what are they doing? They're practicing the shootout move a different way to try to beat a goalie. And yeah, it's their own goalie, but I mean, they're always trying to think of something creative because you said it. Center ice to goalie. What am I going to do?
There's only so many. And if you can catch the goalie off guard, then that's half the battle. And he didn't execute it badly.
Patrick Kane's move. Is that gimmicky?
That's one. I mean, then you cross over into the are you showing the goalie up when you're making some of these moves?
Right.
And that's...
Of course you are.
If it goes in, I don't really care.
Right. If it's my team and they score, it's all good.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I heard one goalie say once he saw what he was doing at the blue line, he knew that just cover the ground because you can't lift the puck doing what he's doing.
Right. The puck is going to be down.
But, it is what it is. People got all up in arms about it, and it was one of those things, the second you saw it live, you're like, people are going to be upset, and they were.
The next time he does it, he's going to make that spinorama. And then that point when his back is to the goalie and the goalie can't see that puck coming is when he drops the blade
And just flips it up.
and flips it up because the goalie thinks it's going to be on the ice. That'll be the next stage to that move. And it might not be him. It could be player X, could play player Y, but somebody's going to take that move and add it to the next level.
Absolutely. These hockey players build off each other all the time.
All the time.
It's such
They'll
a
go,
copycat.
I never thought of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't do that, so I'll make this little twist to it, so now it's my move.
And I want to see that.
Right.
I want to see somebody do
Oh,
it.
absolutely. A little while ago we were touching on youth hockey, and I'll finish with this because I'm involved in youth hockey, and I love youth hockey. USA Hockey Nationals are coming up. And next week, the high school boys varsity in Coral Springs, Florida begins on the 20th of March. The sled hockey nationals are coming up. If you've never watched sled hockey, these guys are amazing. They're absolutely
Looks so much harder than
hockey. It's unbelievable. And then the first week of April, actually it's beginning with the trade deadline on the 3rd of April, we'll have all the Tier 1 and Tier 2 nationals, both boys and girls. And I think the next time you and I sit down to talk hockey, we'll delve into it. But if you're interested in USA Hockey, as you and I are, and the nationals are coming, it's a big deal for these kids to make it to nationals. Just go to usahockey.com and click on the national page, and all the scores, and fasthockey.com will probably be streaming a lot of the games. We know the parents will all be watching.
That's not named after Victor Faust. That's a different Fast.
Yeah, it's not Faust. Okay. Or Foth.
Faust.
But anyways, nationals, we'll discuss it next podcast. But yeah, youth hockey is the core, and that's where it starts, and then they grow, and then we get to see them and watch them in the NHL.
Well, and the NHL certainly knows that, because they know that, and this is, you see it in the non-traditional markets. People don't ever look at the fact that, youth hockey in those markets is huge, because if you've only been in a city for 10, 15, even 20 years, but 10, 15 years, and it's a new city, it's the kids you got to be looking at, not the guys that are, older and they already have a team that's an established team they've been pulling for 40 years.
Absolutely. I mean, USA Hockey over the last decade has done such a great job in growing the game in non-traditional markets like LA, Dallas, Phoenix,
Nashville.
I mean, they're just growing the teams, and every city that has a NHL team, the numbers just rise that much faster.
It's ridiculous.
It's unbelievable. So USA Hockey is doing a really, really, really good job of getting out there, getting those youth guys. They've got the national program going. I know across a lot of cities right now there's what they call state development camps, where USA Hockey players get looked at and have an opportunity to go to districts and then nationals. And those are the guys and girls that get chosen to go to the NDP, the National Development Program, and play for Team USA at the Olympic level and stuff. So there's all these tiers, but there's, you sit down with a beverage and you watch your favorite NHL team, but behind the scenes are all these young kids devoting hours and hours and hours of time and practice to try to get there. They're not all going to make it, but at least they're trying, and US Hockey is really promoting the game. So if you're a hockey fan, promote USA Hockey, and let's grow the game.
Well, and not to get all patriotic, but I mean, the World Juniors this year, the U.S. wins the gold, and to me, the best story of that was the fact that it's not like, okay, Team USA wins, here's 20 kids from Boston that won, kids from the number one pick is going to be from Texas.
Right.
They're from all over California. There's guys from Phoenix now in the NHL. Markets that weren't actually generating players 10 years ago now are, and that's a direct result of this.
And the reason I'm kind of beating this drum is that for all our Canadian hockey fans, they're kind of used to it.
Yeah.
They're used to Hockey Canada, and Hockey Canada having a program and promoting youth, and they have the rinks and they have the numbers and stuff, whereas south of Canada, it's pockets, right? It's the Minnesotas, it's the Dakotas, it's the New York City area, the Detroit, the Michigan area.
Boston, yeah, all that.
Boston. Whereas USA Hockey, a lot like the league, is trying to expand throughout USA and get those pockets where it's not so traditional. Canada really cried a lot when Gretzky went to LA, but it was the best thing that happened to LA hockey, especially at the youth level, to promote the game.
It's the best thing that happened to the sport.
And it's the best thing that happened to the sport because now the game is just promoted from Vancouver to Tampa.
You get once you start getting some of the best athletes in the U.S. choosing hockey over basketball or football or whatever, especially with the way football's going, where parents don't want their kids playing football.
Right.
Some of those kids start choosing hockey, and the product only gets better.
It only gets better, and and I know that USA Hockey and Hockey Canada, they work really tight together to kind of make sure that they're on the same page and stuff. Especially when you're starting out with 5-year-olds, just so that they get taught right, so that at the end of the day they're good. Okay, I've wandered too much on my youth hockey.
No, that was good. And I think the show was about 7 hours long, so we're going to wrap it up. But we're coming back, and we're going to do this ideally every week. Or
once a week,
That's the plan. So hope you enjoyed it, and it will only get better.